So welcome everyone. For those of you that don't know, I do see some new faces here. We're here at South Park Commons, and South Park Commons is a community of scientists, entrepreneurs, founders who are all exploring the next thing that they want to do. That could be writing a book or starting a company. And it's a place where we really support one another in doing that next thing. If you are interested in joining, talk to anyone here that's a member, and we'd love to chat. Really happy to welcome my good friend Dan Coleman here today. Dan was World Series of Poker champion 2014. Yeah, won the Big Drop, has won a number of other tournaments, I don't know, 6 or 7 on the all-time earnings list. And besides all of that, he's just a great guy and an incredible person. Dan, also happy to have you here so I can introduce you to my tribe. A lot of these people are just amazing folks as well. So I think that the fascinating thing about poker is that everyone thinks that they're like a good poker player or can play poker, and obviously you have unequivocally proven that you are one of the best. So we'd just kind of love to hear the story of how you got started playing.
How I got started, I fell in love with poker when I was 13, 14, and started as just something, a hobby. I always enjoyed gambling. I think it was more of a problem to start, to be honest, just a gambling problem. But it's also this amazing game with strategy, and there's psychological aspects, battling your opponents, and I just got hooked, and somehow I came out the other end as it worked out for me, but for a lot of people, poker doesn't work out for them.
Sure. And can you kind of maybe speak to the transition of it being something that you were doing for fun, more of a hobby, to where it really got serious? And I remember hearing stories that Steph has told me of you texting her friends asking for $20.
Yeah, so poker for me, when I was playing in high school, where because back in the day in poker, there's so many online poker sites, and to get players on the sites, they would offer free roll tournaments.
Yeah.
So you would play a 1,000-person tournament, and maybe if you got top 10 in it, they'd give you $2.
Yeah.
Maybe if you won, you got $20. So I would play these, and every now and then, once a week, I'd win one for $2. Whenever that happened, I would just be playing poker until that money was gone.
Yeah.
Then when that ran out, I'd be trying to find a way to get more money on, play more tournaments, and it was really an obsession.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like you were able to kind of get that 10,000 hours mastery, maybe in a condensed time frame.
Yeah. When I wasn't playing poker online, I was playing poker with friends in person. I remember waiting before school started. I'd take a deck of cards, deal out a bunch of hands. And through dealing out hands, I think I got to, because poker, there's 2,500 possible hands you could have, and there's maybe 100,000 different board combinations. So I would just deal out so many hands, one after the other. I think by doing that, I was able to put together a really big sample size of just being able to have a good sense of the probability of each hand, where I didn't know the math 100%, but a good idea in my head where I could guesstimate what hands have certain probabilities of hitting,
And then maybe speak to kind of the switch to getting bankrolled. And I don't know if you mind me sharing this, but I think it's pretty badass that you were in high school or between high school and that next thing, and you were working as a dishwasher.
Yeah, I was working in a kitchen.
Yeah. Working at a kitchen and a retirement home. Chose not to go to college and just pursued this. And it just must have taken a lot of belief in yourself to follow that path, as opposed to all of the pressure from the outside world, your parents, right? There's a right way to live, go to college, blah, blah, blah.
To be honest, there was none of that. I didn't feel any pressure.
Yeah.
I was just so committed to playing poker and wanting to be the best that it was just, there's nothing else mattered,
Yeah.
It was just, I need to figure out this game. I believe that I can beat these players. I'm not beating them now, but if I keep playing them in the future, I think I can beat them.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that mattered.
Yeah. So like these players being the very best people in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, when did you have that thought?
Yeah, maybe like, yeah, out of high school, I was senior year of high school, I was playing a lot, and I ran up some pretty big bankrolls to where I'd run up the bankroll, and whenever I got a good amount of money, I'd play the very best people. And with any bankroll, any type of like investment fund, you have like it's like risk of ruin, right? You want to always have a certain amount of buy-ins, or if you don't want to move up too high in stakes where if you do take a loss, you're screwed. But with gambling, I would go way bigger than I should have, and I went broke a lot.
Yeah.
But each time I went broke, it was a valuable learning lesson, you know?
That's huge.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like in your senior year of high school, you kind of had this experience where you had made it to an extent where you were playing with the best, and at that point it was just like getting back there and then staying there.
Yeah, every time I went broke, going broke against one of the best players in the world, because I only played heads-up tournaments. So most poker, you play it at a table with 6 other people, 9 other people. I only enjoyed one-on-one. It was way more psychological, way more just you versus the other person and trying to outwit them, outsmart them. Whenever I'd lose versus one of them, you're thinking, how'd they know I was bluffing there? You know, like, what did I do wrong? How do you know that? So I just always, as soon as I lost to them, go back, try and think of everything that went wrong for me, then try and engineer how I play for the next time he's not going to be able to figure that out, you know?
Would like that be against a certain player, or was that just like more for your own game? So like were you playing the game against that certain player?
Yeah, I was. So there's a couple approaches to poker. One approach is to have an overall strategy that no matter who you're playing against, it's going to be pretty good, and they have to adapt to you. I'd adapt my strategy to the other person. Back then, it was probably the optimal approach, but nowadays it's all about being non-exploitable. So it wouldn't work today, but back when I was playing, that was the way to do it.
Yeah, I definitely want to touch on like how poker has changed today, because I know that machine learning has like changed the game a lot.
Yeah, totally different games.
Yeah, but like one of my favorite stories that you've told me is kind of the come up in 2012? 2013. And maybe you can just like set the stage of like the issues of like not being able to play in certain places, and then I know there's like a story with like a psychic as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I made some mistakes when I was younger playing poker, where I couldn't play in the biggest site, which was Pokerstars. They banned me, and being banned from Pokerstars is effectively like it's impossible to make a good living playing poker. That's where all the action was, the highest stakes, the best worldwide pools where you get to play with Brazilians, Italians, Russians, all the worst players. So it's true. So I couldn't play on those sites. So in the Pokerstars said, because I was banned, they said it's a lifetime ban, don't even try coming back on. So I realized, okay.
Wait, why? So it's like, why did they ban you?
18, I was playing multiple accounts in tournaments.
Okay.
This isn't like multiple accounts at one table with other players.
Yeah.
It was like a 5,000 person tournament.
Yeah.
And
you just wanted to play more.
Yeah, exactly. I was just addicted to playing. I just wanted to yeah, exactly. I enjoyed playing. So I would, if you lose that one tournament, you're out. You can't play it again until next week.
Yeah.
So I got a couple laptops, made an extra account, put in a fake name, then bought into that tournament a couple times.
Gotcha.
But yeah, you can't do that. So they banned me. But so from there, I had no way to play in Pokerstars, and I tried to play once more on their site. They found out it was me. They confiscated all my money, so I wasn't going to try that again. So from there, I just decided, okay, poker's not going to be for me. I'm going to just go to school now, give up on it.
Yeah.
But then a friend of mine, she told me, she's like, look, I know that it's going to be okay. It's going to work out for you. You just have to go to Montreal, move outside the country, because you couldn't play in America at this point.
Yeah.
They made it so you weren't allowed. So I went to Montreal and I set up everything. I wrote to Pokerstars, look, I'm all set up to play. All you have to do is let me back on, and I'm going to be like an upstanding member of the site, like not going to do anything sketchy. So yeah, then they let me back on, and from there, everything was just, and from that time on, when I got that second chance, I was like, I'm not going to blow this. So before, I'd always try and gamble above my bankroll. I just did everything correctly. I actually grinded hard, like worked my way up in stakes. And yeah, that was the golden year for me.
Yeah, and at that point you were playing like at least 16 hours a day?
Not 16, that's pretty crazy. Probably 12 to 14. Yeah, 12 to 14 every day, and I take like 1 day off a month. Yeah.
1 day off a month.
Yeah.
And so that was the come up.
Mm-hmm.
And then talk about the like switch from having the success in Pokerstars. And again, this was all in heads up, right?
All heads up sitting goes.
All heads up.
It's one-on-one tournaments. Yeah.
Yeah. So talk about kind of like switch from doing that for a year to playing live, and maybe like switch in the game from heads up to actually playing with a table.
Yeah. So with heads up poker, the way poker works is you have to put in blinds each hand before the action starts, and that incentivizes you to play. Otherwise, if you didn't have to put in blinds before the hand, you would just wait all day for aces, you know?
Yeah.
But because you have to put in blinds, you have to play hands. Otherwise, you're gonna get blinded out. So heads up poker, you have to play a lot of hands, and if you don't, you can't beat anyone. You have to play a wide range. So that was where I started. So I was very comfortable playing with really marginal holdings, marginal cards. So when I moved to tournaments, everybody else was playing too tight, and they were uncomfortable playing the weaker part of the range. They want to play like 6-7 suited, all the top hands. But in reality, when you're in the big blind, when you're in certain positions, you have to play wider hands. Otherwise, especially when antes come into play also outside the blinds, you just can't play profitably. So I was very comfortable playing all these sorts of weaker hands, on the flop, turn, river. So I eventually made the transition to playing live tournaments. Yeah, I think I was way ahead of the curve at that time. Mm-hmm.
Because of the 10,000 hours of like heads up?
I mean, probably like 5 million hands of heads up. Yeah, 10,000 hours at least. Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of hands.
Mm-hmm. And also too, the people that play live poker their whole life, live poker, you might play 20 hands an hour. If you have a fast dealer or a fast table, you're playing online poker. You can play 6 tables at a time. You can probably play like 500 hands an hour.
Wow.
You know, so somebody that's been playing poker live for 30 years, an online player in like 2 years, they already have more experience than the live player. You know?
Yeah. I never thought about it like that. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So I mean, like maybe how did you get to the one drop? Like you had some success before that.
Yeah, so getting into the one drop tournament, it was $1 million buy-in that only came up. They did the first one in 2014. It was a big spectacle. It was like 10% went to charity, and then they skipped it the next year. Then the year after, 2014, they're running it again. I decided to hop in and sold a bunch of action. It's insane for anybody to put up $1 million of their own money. Yeah. So for pros, they sell huge pieces of themselves to other players. You swap with other players in the tournament. But yeah, I knew at the start of that year, 2013 went really well for me. I already had success in live tournaments to start 2014. So yeah, I raised enough money fairly easily, and I was looking forward to that tournament like pretty much all of 2014.
Yeah. And then you won it, and there was kind of some like controversy about you like not falling into line and being like, yay, poker's the best.
Right. Yeah, a couple things. So poker has always wanted, the poker media, the poker sites, they've always wanted to make it seem like a game where it's all skill and the best players are going to win every time. And the reality is, like, I played poker from a young age. Like, I've seen all the dark parts of poker, you know? Yeah. And me, myself, losing all my money, thinking, like, what did I just do? To seeing friends that I came up with that poker they dropped out of school, poker was going well for them. Then the game evolved. They didn't keep up with it. Now they're just totally down on their luck, you know. So there's definitely a dark side to poker, and I didn't want to promote it. In that I didn't want to promote it as, because I'm sure a young kid who had all the success in 2013. I won tournaments that started 2014. Now I just won the biggest tournament, the second biggest tournament of all time. They were going to want to promote me as, look, this young kid who like figured out poker. Anybody can do this if you work hard. And I mean, I worked really hard, but at the same time, like playing poker tournaments, there's a huge luck component.
Yeah, of course.
And I didn't want them to promote it, use me to promote it in that light.
Yeah.
So I decided to just not talk to the media, and yeah, they didn't like that.
It's badass. Yeah, so how's the game changed?
Yeah, so poker has changed a lot since over the past few years. Nowadays, the best players in the world, they use computers to, you have this software that analyzes every single spot, and you plug in your computer, you put in a range of hands that you think your opponent has. You say you pick a flop and that you had with an opponent. You set their hand range. You set like each street certain bet sizing you'd want to do. Then you just walk away from your computer. It sounds like a car is in your room. It's just so loud. The computer just processing every single possibility, every single possible run out, and then it gets back to you a little while later. This is exactly what you want to do in this spot. With like, you want to do this strategy of you do this 75% of the time, this 13% of the time, this 12% of the time. It's this very complex strategy, and humans try and simplify it a bit after seeing the results that the computer tells you. But the game turned into one where you're trying to outsmart your opponent. To now it's who can study what the computer tells you to do and implement it when you're playing the best.
So yeah, so now it's basically the person's able to memorize the most rows of a spreadsheet.
Yeah, I mean, before in poker, you would get to a hand on the river, your opponent bets, it puts you all in. You have to think like, wow, is he bluffing me? Like, does he really have it? You're thinking this in your mind, like trying to look for tells. Nowadays, poker's not like that. The person bluffing, he's bluffing because he looks at the clock, and people randomize their hands by, say, we call it solvers, the simulators in poker that tell you what to do. And the solver will say, bluff 33% of the time, check 66%, the other 2/3, you know? So this person, when they get to the action on the river, they might use a stopwatch on their phone, on their watch, and when it's on a certain 20-second mark, okay, this time I'm gonna bluff. So you're not thinking, is he really bluffing me right now? No, the person's not even worried that they're bluffing or not. They know it's the correct strategy. What they're doing is you have to bet this % of the time.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, so it's just a very it's a solved game now, and it's just, it took away before I saw it as like a romantic game where it's just you versus the opponent, psychology, staring them in the eye, seeing if they have the nerve to bluff you. Now there's none of that, you know? Yeah, it's changed a lot.
What did you learn about the psychology of other people by playing that so much?
That's a good question. I mean, so there's a lot of ways I could answer that. One thing that poker taught me, and it's a bad way to view the world, but I think it's somewhat accurate in a lot of scenarios, is that poker, it's a game of exploitation. You know, you exploit the other players, you try and have a better strategy than them. And so that's one part of the exploitation, but another part is you get weaker players to play with you. Because you have, number one, you know your strategy is better, but now you have to get them to play in your game with you. So you can exploit them to get you in, so you can exploit their strategy. So my world view somewhat goes towards like, I view everything as like exploitation. And yeah, it's a bit ugly.
Yeah, it sounds a bit dark.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the gambling world, you know, it's being casinos, and it's just, it's pure exploitation. What the casinos do, poker players, we're not gambling against the casino, but we're pretty much being the casino against other players, you know? Come play with us and we're gonna take your money. Hopefully we supply you with enough entertainment trying to beat us, like,
Yeah, interesting. So you won the big drop at what, 24?
Yeah, 24.
24.
Actually, 23.
23. So a lot of success at an early age. Maybe talk about the past like couple years since then. Obviously, you haven't been playing very, very actively. Where is your head at?
I'm still trying to figure that out. Yeah, after winning that, I went on to, actually, so after 2013, where I was playing 12, 14 hours a day every day, like as anybody would in that scenario, I got burnt out. So that's when I made the move away from online poker to playing live tournaments. So I went into that year not really enjoying poker, being burnt out from it. And then I play these tournaments, I just keep winning one after another. And I wasn't enjoying it because I was already burnt out. And I kept winning, and I was like, wow, I'm not even having fun. And what's going to happen when I start losing? Like, then I'm going to really be miserable. So at that point, I stopped playing for a while. Then I just started playing here and there, but eventually I realized the passion never came back for me. And as strategy evolved, and I just didn't care to stay up to date with it. 'Cause, you know, if you're not passionate about something, it's much more difficult to actually put in the time to work hard. So yeah, I decided it's better to step away and instead of lie to myself and say, oh, I can still compete at this level and not work hard. While all these other kids, they're as hungry as I was when I was 18, you know? Like, I'm not going to be able to beat somebody who has that mindset. So yeah, I've stepped away since then.
Nice. What's the best book that you've ever read?
The best book I've ever
Doesn't
read?
have to be about poker. A book that really shook you.
Not about poker, not yeah, Brothers Karamazov, Dostoevsky.
And what about that book?
It's just a book about life, about being human. Yeah. And I guess too, Dostoevsky, he had a lot of madness in his mind. He was a degenerate gambler, all these things. So I connect to the madness a little bit. Yeah.
If you could have one message displayed to every human being on Earth, what would it be?
I don't know.
Fair. What are you into now?
Yeah, I'm enjoying traveling a lot. I've been living in Brazil, spent a lot of time there, trying to learn Portuguese. I'm enjoying that process. Apart from that, yeah, that's about it.
Thoughts about San Francisco? It's been a couple hours.
Yeah, getting off the plane here in August, and it's 60 degrees, cloudy. And where am I? I thought I'm in California. It's the weather, but I guess this is par for California, right? For San Francisco.
Yeah. You think that maybe that weather is what motivates people to work so hard and build these big companies?
I think so. I think there's something to be said about a climate that's not that ideal. It keeps you don't have time to be outside and enjoy the weather, so you're gonna be inside working hard, right? Or spending time in Rio, you have just this incredible city full of. You could just go to the beach and hang out all day. You know, there's no incentive to really. Life is already too good to just. You can just relax anywhere. If you're in San Francisco, New York, some city that doesn't have the best weather, well, you don't have the options to just relax outside, so might as well work.
Might as well work. Might as well. Any advice to an up-and-coming poker player that might be in the room?
I say this to everybody who asks me, hey, I want to get to your level, what's the advice? I really advise them, do not play poker professionally. Like, just enjoy the game for what it is, learn the strategy. It's good to gamble, and I think it's good to, one thing I think that's really good about poker that it taught me, and it was a great learning experience, is if you have a belief in something, bet money on it. You know, like if you're not willing to bet money on it, then you don't really believe it. So, and through that, I had, because one thing in poker that's fairly common is prop betting. You're just always betting on random stuff like, hey, you think you can run 20 miles tomorrow without exercise? We start at like 7 a.m. You're at the poker table. You've been playing for 12 hours. So it says, yeah, I think I can do that. Okay, let's bet on it. You know, you have these crazy prop bets in poker, like some kid running like 3 marathons in one day, like the next day after making that bet at a bar and actually doing it, you know. But anything in poker, like people bet on it, and what it's taught me is after making so many bad bets, I've been able to realize areas that I don't know and like stay away from, and areas where like if I think I have like if my intuition says like I think I'm at like a 55% advantage just on this random like guess, okay, I'm willing to bet a ton of money on it. Yeah. You know, so it's taught. So that's one thing that is probably a really good educational tool, gambling and poker in general for that. So I would advise somebody, yeah, it's good to learn poker in that regard, but to make it as a pro, it's too difficult, and it's better to have other options. I think go to school, have like a normal job. And if you're somebody who's so stubborn after me telling you that you still want to play, then you're the right person to pursue it further. Yeah. You know, because you have to be obsessed and you have to want it so bad. Know that like if you fail, like you're gonna be pretty screwed. So yeah, just total like passion and stubbornness too.
What's the craziest prop bet that you've ever made or seen made?
The craziest prop bet. I've seen a lot. I think the 2 kids were out at a bar, and this guy I know who it was like 5 a.m. they were drinking. He said the next day, I think I can run 3 marathons the next day. And they did that bet, you know, and like he almost died, but he got it done. And the craziest part of this bet was the kid bet $1 million to win $1 million and risk 300,000. So he laid 3-to-1 odds on him being able to do it. Jesus. And that's another thing actually with prop bets, which I realized is like, especially with physical feats, is that the risk of losing always outweighs the risk, the actual winning. So. I did a prop bet once where I hadn't done any cardio exercising in the past like year, and I made a bet that I could run a 5K the next day in under 22 minutes. But I bet a lot of money that I couldn't do it. Say if somebody said like, hey, I'll give you 10,000 if you can do it, but nothing if you can't. You don't have to pay if you lose. Then like as I'm halfway through and it's getting tired, I can check out. Yeah. But by betting myself and betting a large amount, more than I was going to win, as I'm getting more and more further along into the run, it's getting more tiring. It's like, oh crap, like if I get out now, I'm actually going to have to lose money. So I think that propelled me further than actual wanting to earning the money. Yeah,
loss aversion.
Yeah, loss aversion, exactly.
Yeah, it's a powerful thing.
I think it's a very powerful tool.
Huh. Cool. Anything else you want to talk about?
No.
Audience?
Anybody have questions?
Cool. We have a microphone.
Cool. Hi. How does your interest in betting translate to the markets or to crypto or to other areas that you're currently betting on, or skill-based betting on, or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess through poker, I've definitely conditioned myself to think really well in terms of probability and always having a pretty good sense of, where like the percents lie and like what's a good investment, what's a good bet, and also meeting really a lot of other smart people that, and the gambling world brings a pretty like eclectic mix of people together. So having a good network through that to bounce ideas off of. And I also too with crypto, which I've somewhat got into, poker was online gambling was one of the first areas that people started using Bitcoin and stuff like that. So it's always been, poker players have always been pretty big into it. So it's a natural, another way to go, invest in crypto.
Are there other areas you have high conviction?
No, I wouldn't say that.
When I watch you on TV, you seem like really cold and stoic in a way that I'm sure is productive. And can you talk about like the physiological response of being at a final table and what's actually happening under your skin?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I guess one thing that poker taught me, and every other professional poker player, is you can only do so much with your play and your strategy, but so much else comes down to luck. And if you invest all your emotions into winning on any given day, it's just out of your control. So you learn to deaden your emotions and not care the day-to-day swings. Okay, I lost, but I got my money in good. I had the best hand. So you're going to be fine with whether you win or lose. So you get to that big final table, and you're just only thinking in those terms. Like, I'm just going to play my game, and whatever happens, happens. That's why you see it happen to me. It happens to all these other professional players, where when they win, or they win a big all-in, they don't even smile. They don't celebrate, you know? And it looks really cold to the other people watching. It's like, what are you talking about? You just won all this money in this huge pot, and they're just silent, not even a smile. So it's good for your overall game, because if you're always worried about the wins and losses out of your control, you're going to tilt, you're going to play poorly. So the proper way to look at it is just play your game, whatever happens, happens. But I think carrying that over to other parts of your life, it's very unhealthy.
Yeah, when you were transitioning from online to live, were there any hurdles there where you were giving physical tells or anything like that? Because the tells are very different.
Yeah, definitely. Tells are a real thing. I think when I first started out, I was a bit of a tell box. That's what you say for people that just give out so many tells. But I think over time, I learned to. So one thing that you can do, which negates all tells almost, is as long as you're cognizant of what you do when you have a good hand and when you have a bad hand, just every now and then. So say I smile when I have a good hand. Well, when I have a bad hand, every now and then, just smile too, you know? Or when you're bluffing, a lot of people, they gulp. Like, well, when you have a good hand, every now and then, do that too. So it's called reverse tells, and that throws off. It makes it so you can't put any weight into anybody's tells as long as somebody's doing reverse tells.
And then one other question is, are there other games that you've seen that are maybe like have a lot of the same strategy or the same lessons as poker, but don't have the same kind of negative environment?
I'm not sure. I haven't really gotten into too many games outside of poker. I know I have a lot of friends that got in. They were Magic the Gathering players. That was a natural way to get into poker. Actually, most of the top players still today, they came from a Magic the Gathering background. But then from there, I guess a lot of people play Hearthstone. That might be similar. Because poker is a game of incomplete information, you know? You're trying to make a strategy based on that. But apart from that, no. But also, too, one thing that makes poker beautiful, I think, and it's also part of the dark side of poker, is the gambling aspect. You know, and like Noah said, skin in the game. Like if poker was played for nothing, it just wouldn't be that interesting. Seeing somebody make a big bluff on the river when there's no money involved, like, they might not get nervous. But when you put a ton of money in, you raise the stakes, things change. So it makes it beautiful, but also brings the darkness into it, right? Mm-hmm.
You spoke a little bit about the change that's happened in online poker, but I'm wondering, has that change been reflected in live poker?
It has.
Okay.
Yeah. So everything starts with online poker, and then a bunch of the online players that are always the best, they see what's happening in the big live tournaments, in the big live cash games, say, wow, these guys are so bad. Like, even if I'm not experienced playing live, not comfortable, their strategies are so bad, I'll adapt. I'll start out maybe having some tells, but it's going to be worth it overall. Then eventually everybody playing live, they have to catch up or they go broke and a new generation comes in.
Oh, interesting. So you would say that the strategies actually flow from online to live? Very cool.
Hey, do you think there are ways to make the dark side of poker less dark? Because there's a lot of benefits that it has to some people's lives with understanding probability and evaluating risk. So are there ways that you've contemplated that could make the dark sides of poker less dark?
Yeah. The thing is, though, if for so many people that can that can gamble responsibly, then for sure they can get so much out of poker. Even if they're losing a little bit, it can teach them so much. And for them, yeah, it's a great game, a great educational tool, enjoyable game. But then for a small percent of the population, which we call them fish in poker, like these big fish, almost like whales, they're like gambling addicts and they almost want to lose deep down, and they're just gonna for them losing is enjoyable, and that's where it can get dark, I guess. And I don't know if there's any way that you can keep. It might be worth it overall that those people exist, but it's also a valuable game for other people.
Explain the psychology of losing being an enjoyable thing for a gambling addict.
That's a good question. I guess for everybody it's different. Maybe it's like flirting with your own destruction. Like for being humans, like creating stuff is really enjoyable, but there's something enjoyable about just totally destroying something, right? Just smashing something with a baseball bat. And you can do that, you're doing that with your own money and just bringing apart your destruction. I don't know.
Yeah.
For some people, they enjoy it. I mean, we're all gonna be destroyed. We all die at some point. So I don't know. I think just flirting with your own destruction, that might be like a somewhat human thing. Yeah.
I was just curious about the psychological aspect of the game. Did you have like a specific psychological strategy against Daniel Negreanu? He's like one of my favorite players.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't have a psychological strategy versus him. That was actually, so at the time I was playing so many heads-up sit-and-goes, one-on-one tournaments, and even though it was on this huge stage, like the biggest stage in all of poker, I know he was just a live player at that point. Since then, he's studied a bunch of online strategies, high-level poker strategies, but at the time I knew he hadn't been. And like, even though his stage was big televised tournaments, my stage was one-on-one, and I felt like I'm just levels above him at this point, like in his career, my career. So I felt totally comfortable. It wasn't even psychological. It was just I had a much better strategy than him. So, yeah.
What was the strategy?
No, it was just playing like millions of hands of one-on-one. Just my experience level playing one-on-one. Like I put in so many more hands than him. So, yeah, I knew exactly what to do in every spot. And for him, he was just, if you saw how I was playing, I was just going so fast. Actually, there was a little bit of psychological strategy on my part. I was purposely trying to play as fast as possible. And even if I knew like, maybe like 50-50, I could do this or this in this spot and I should think about it, I would just pick one right away just to come off like, I have this down. Just so in later spots, he'd just be like, wow, like he's doing something different. Like he has me figured out, like what do I do? Maybe to weaken, maybe to get him off his game a bit more. So yeah, I did do that, but yeah.
Now that poker is mostly solved, and even I'm sure you've seen recently, they just solved it for 6 max as well. How do you see this affecting like online, online poker? Do you see it dying or withering?
Yeah, I think it has to, right? Because the thing is that back in the day, somebody who wasn't that good at poker, they could deposit money online, and the players that they were playing against, they weren't that much better than them. So they could keep playing. It was fun to them. They'd still like lose, and they'd say, oh, it's rigged. But they'd win maybe like 40% of the time, lose 60% of the time they played. But nowadays, the strategy is so much more advanced through solvers that somebody who's just starting out and playing online for the first time, they're going to lose such a higher percent of the time. Where right away, like, they're like, I can't win. I'm going to play another game. I'm done with poker. I'll play in a casino. But like, part of the fun of poker is a bad player can win. Like, it's not like chess where the worst player loses every time. Poker, a bad player can win a good amount of the time. But nowadays, it's fewer and fewer that they can win. Yeah, so I think naturally online poker will die because of that.
Do you ever strike deals on final tables?
Yeah, playing with friends deep at a final table, we'd strike a deal. It's pretty reckless not to when you're playing for so much money, and if you're playing against another good player, and you might say, even if you think you win 51% of the time, you're playing for like $1 million. Nobody has the bankroll to withstand that variance. Yeah, you strike a deal and you chop it up. And it actually hurts the TV production of the final table because the players don't care at that point. They're not even nervous when they're all in. But yeah, naturally you kind of have to do that.
Did you do it at one drop?
No. But I wasn't playing with 100% of my action, And I also felt pretty comfortable with my edge versus Negreanu. Yeah, good question.
If you live in Brazil, I'm curious if you followed the run of James Holzhauer on Jeopardy, the professional poker player.
I was following a little bit only because my Twitter feed has a bunch of poker players and everybody was talking about it.
I'm kind of curious what you think either of him in poker or kind of other poker players going into game shows. Is there any?
I think there was one poker player before him too that went in that was on Jeopardy, Alex Jacob, and he had success as well. Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I saw a little bit of his strategy. He was kind of going crazy, like searching the board for daily doubles and betting huge. I'd imagine it was like one of the better strategies out there. He still had to know a lot of these answers, right? So that was impressive. But yeah, I followed it a little bit.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming. Yeah, this was really fun.